Tonight on The Art Show, Jill Singer talks to veteran filmmaker Bob Connolly about facing the music.
We didn't want a simple, straightforward heroine. We wanted someone that everyone could identify with, who had feet of clay.
Supermodel steps into the rarefied world of fine silverware design in the decorative tradition.
For $110,000, you could buy a flat, book a table for 6 for lunch with Bill Clinton, or you could buy one of these, a dish for your fish.
And close-up profiles painter Rick Amor.
There's a little bit of stage managing goes on in paintings. You have to set up a scene in a way.
But first, the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Art Awards from Darwin.
Mena country Napangardi.
This is her country, Minamina, her father's country. Minamina is about 500 kilometres northwest of Alice Springs. It's a women's country, and Dorothy paints her Jukaba.
This is Salt on Minamina, Dorothy Napangardi's entry in the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Art Award, presented last Friday in Darwin. Born about 50 years ago in the bush in the Minamina area, Dorothy is a custodian of this sacred ceremonial site and of its Walpiri Jukapa, or dreaming story.
The way salt is in the title, the way you feel the extraordinary action of salt coming out of the cracked earth. See how slowly she's put it together on a large scale, crossing these nets of lines and responding to the action of the earth over time.
Darwin's Museum and Art Gallery has hosted these awards for 18 years, and art pours in from every corner of Australia. Every style is on show, from Arnhem Land's traditional bark paintings and sculptures, through the evolving canvases of the central and western deserts, to the colours and commentary of contemporary urban painters. This is the pinnacle for Indigenous artists, the Supreme Prize, with a pool of $56,000, courtesy of Telstra.
And it's a terrific show, a terrific event, and a very important kind of constant momentum within Australia that this exhibition comes out of the top end every year. And the range, energy of work that this show gives proof of is one of the most exciting currents in Australian art in the whole country.
There are 4 supporting awards. For bark painting, won by John Bullen from Maningrida with magpie geese. For general painting, won by Prince of Wales from Darwin for body marks. For works on paper, won by Paddy Japaljari Stewart and Paddy Japaljari Sims for Ewan Damu doors. And the 3-dimensional award, won by Craig Kumita from Arakoon for saltwater crocodile. One of the 2 judges, Bernice Murphy, details what it is in a traditional and familiar theme that catches the eye of the judges.
It's just alive all over with these wonderful details of very close observation and of life teeming cyclically.
But from Alice Springs, where her daughters and granddaughters waited apprehensively in Gallery Gondwana for the phone to ring, the overall winner was Dorothy Napangardi.
I think it's more than recognition in terms of artistic excellence and her creative endeavour. It's also about where that point in her career and in her, I guess, as a practitioner, the development of her particular artistic style.
Seeing wonderful art when she came to Sydney about 4 years ago, it opened up a tremendous change in her thinking, which you can see in this remarkable landscape, which shows an incredible concentration of mind and freedom with her older cultural sources.
Almost 500 entries were received this year, which they then boiled down to 133 finalists for the exhibition. If they'd had enough room, says Anna Malgorzevich, they'd have been justified in showing the lot. This award certainly represents the cream of Indigenous artists in this country, doesn't it?
The cream, and yet it's also opportunity for emerging artists to participate, and it is very much an open opportunity in that respect, and you know, as a result there are often some wonderful surprises.
Yet another postcard Darwin sunset heralded the awards ceremony, sung and danced. All the presentations were an ancient art form in themselves. In Dorothy's case, temptation, followed by realisation and acclaim. The exhibition continues in Darwin at the Museum and Art Gallery until January 6, 2002.
What is it with Scandinavians? Leaving aside my cousins living happily in Sweden, they seem to have two traditions they're known for: hardcore pornography and the exquisite design of electronics, glassware, furniture and silverware. I guess they have to do something to amuse themselves in those long, dark winters. Although George Jensen established his silverware company in 1902, it wasn't until Henning Koppel, a brash and arrogant artist started at Jensen as a designer in 1945, that the company began to set new design standards in silverware. As a painter and sculptor, Koppel had embraced modernism, and it was that aesthetic that was behind his strong, simple works, in which the form itself was all. His first produced work in 1948 was small but startling. A bracelet made of strangely beautiful links, each one unique. They may have been inspired by whale vertebrae or amoeba. No one really knows. But these links became something of a signature for Koppel in his future designs. Because he was an artist, Koppel didn't know a silversmith's hammer from a jackhammer, which made life difficult for those craftsmen who had to turn his watercolours into real, handmade silver objects. The story goes that the one and only time he picked up a hammer was to destroy a work of his that had been savaged by the critics. One really strange thing about Koppel being a designer of silverware is that he valued the art much more than the function. In fact, in his early days, he couldn't give a stuff about the function. This piece, called The African Girl, is a good example of that. When he submitted the design to the silversmiths, they said, "It can't be made. The neck's too thin. It won't pour properly." Koppel's response was, "I don't give a ripped rat's ass. Make it." So they made a model. This is it. It never went into production. This is Koppel's first masterpiece of hollowware, and it really worked. By now the silversmiths were used to almost performing miracles for this demanding man. They simply gave it an unflattering nickname, in this case the pregnant duck, and got on with it. But just have a look at it. Its high-flowing handle, its narrow neck, it's definitely 5 months up the duff. All of these things made the silversmith's job hell. But there's no denying it's a beautiful piece. For $110,000 you could buy a flat, put your child through an expensive private school, book a table for 6 for lunch with Bill Clinton, or you could buy one of these, a dish for your fish. Toadfish. Known as the fish dish, this is Koppel's most famous piece, and it's also his least sold. But there is a reason why it's so expensive. The fish dish is handmade from start to finish, taking around 600 hours or 3 months to complete. Starting with 2 flat sheets of silver, the craftsman must possess extraordinary patience and precision to mould and shape the dish and the lid. Every step of the process must be finished to perfection, because one mistake would mean having to start all over again. Tragically, in 1980, some of Koppel's major works were smelted down because artificially high prices had led to a brief silver shortage. And not long after, he too was gone, succumbing to emphysema at the age of 63. But today, you'll still find craftsmen spending their working lives producing Koppel's exquisite designs.
Frankston on the beach, our house backed onto the beach, so the sea would have been some of the first things, sights and sounds that I would have experienced when I was a child. So it's very important to me, the sea. I sort of like being near the sea, I like being on the sea, and it's got quite an emotional charge for me. I mean, I used to go back to it obsessively in paintings. Memory will often be a starting point for me because certain things sort of stick in your mind, and for various emotional reasons. There's a need to explain them to yourself in a way. And sometimes it's a desire to relive it too, that it was an enjoyable memory or interesting. And to paint it allows you then to relive it in a very sort of hands-on. Of anxiety or anticipation or disquiet. I mean, there's a little bit of stage managing goes on in paintings. You have to set up a scene in a way, and figures naturally evoke certain feelings, so I use them to evoke the emotional pitch of the painting. Colour and tone, set an emotional pitch in the picture, like lighting and so on. But that's consciously manipulated. You actually plan to do it a certain way, so you'll evoke a certain emotion. The painting The Meeting was a picture that evolved initially from the study of the alley, and then the figures appeared as I painted the picture. The van appeared, the figure in the window, and so on. But it is based on a real alley in Melbourne. But alleys aren't things I paint a lot of. People assume I do, but I don't. When I came back from London, I brought back a series of drawings and photographs to the British Museum, which I painted a small series of pictures based around those, actually, of Roman horses and Assyrian figures, because museums always interest me. I sort of like museums, I like old museums. But then I stop painting interiors and I move outside again. I mean, there's no plan behind it all. I make sketches, I make watercolour studies, I do big drawings, perhaps a large study, then the painting. But drawing is the basis of the original sort of conception. I always sketch it out first, draw it out, do little thumbnail sketches, and it slowly elaborates from there into larger works. You should never be comfortable as an artist. I mean, each picture you paint is a failure, and you always hope the next one is going to be the one that succeeds. And that's the way I look at it anyway. painting is basically a dialogue between two people, a silent dialogue, the viewer and the artist and the viewer. And there's no words involved, it's just looking. And that's what art is about. It's about looking in the end.
Hello, my name is Jacques Main. You're here at my ice cream shop to learn the secrets of sorbet and the art show What's On. This is my supermodel, Damar Diaz, 6080. She's a real cool babe. Over at 200 Gertrude Street, Kate Bainan has her new exhibition, Chinese Calligraffiti. Calligraffiti is a mix of graffiti and calligraphy, obviously, and it follows the adventures of Ji Li. Here's something that Kate prepared earlier. Nice. And the secret is sugar. Now, you may remember Jacques and the Beanstalk. Well, this is loosely based on that. It's by Spare Parts Puppet Theatre. It's called Small Giants. And in this one, Jack is a girl taking on the corporate giants in her world. Amazing. The secret of the sorbet is all in the wrist. Now, as part of Space Odysseys at the Art Gallery of New South Wales, they're running free feature films, docos and cartoons. There's even my favourite, Duck Dodgers in the 24th and a half century. They're free, you can't miss. So go along, check them out. A large attendance in the antechamber is back after a successful tour interstate. Now, this is about Sir Francis Galton, who was one of the great thinkers of a previous time. He had theories on arithmetic by smell and the art of making the perfect cup of tea. Here he is here. And the final secret is the start button. Voila. Magnifique.
Facing the Music is the latest documentary success for husband and wife filmmaking team Bob Connolly and Robin Anderson. It traces a tumultuous year in the life of Professor Anne Boyd, Dean of Music at the University of Sydney. It's a year which sees the faculty's budget and programs slashed, staff and students traumatised, and the Dean become radicalised.
The university is dead.
Bob, congratulations on Facing the Music. Why do you think it has struck such a chord with so many viewers?
Well, I think it's got a strong central character and an interesting person who's sort of shown warts and all, so to speak. Apart from that, the situation that it documents, I think, is replicated in a lot of institutions and organisations in places like Australia, this whole sort of economic rationalist fallout. People see what's happening to the ABC, these sort of organisations, which in this day and age, basically, aren't as well supported as they used to be. Now, that has a human consequence. And I think this film, perhaps for the first time, certainly in a university, shows the human consequence of what happens when you've got not enough money to do your job properly.
That said, you're not particularly interested in making political messages, are you?
No. Observational filmmaking is trying to capture things as they are, not as you think they ought to be. And whatever my personal view about the economic rationalist situation or the consequences of it at Sydney University's music department, what primarily interested us during the filming and the editing was focusing on this individual, Professor Anne Boyd, and the personal situation that she faced.
Do you belong to a union? Students United will never be defeated. The universities are thought banks. They're knowledge banks. They're where knowledge in our communities reside.
Anne Boyd is caught in this film in intensely emotional, near breakdown situations. We didn't want a simple, straightforward heroine. We wanted someone that everyone could identify with, who had feet of clay, like the rest of us. And I think that what the subjects respond to, perhaps, is just that sense that they have been treated fairly. I mean, the only people who really get cross at us are the ones we leave out. It's true.
In the last 20 years, Connolly and Anderson have made just 5 documentaries, but all have been extraordinarily successful and all focus in some form on power struggles. The first 3 were filmed in Papua New Guinea, First Contact, Jolay's Neighbours and Black Harvest. Then came the legendary Rats in the Ranks, a behind-the-scenes look at political number crunching as the wily Larry Hand fights to win another term as Mayor of Leichhardt.
I'd be buggered if I was going to sit there and have idle chit-chat after she stabbed me in the back. It's pretty pathetic, really. Kath would not have been on the council if she wasn't on our ticket. She wouldn't have got up, she ran herself. And she nearly wasn't on because she was nearly 4 instead of 3. I mean, it's just absolute act of treachery.
How engaged do you become with the characters in your docos?
Well, you at the end of it, it's as though you've been through a campaign, a war with them, in a way. Because you're there all the time. I mean, in the case of Anne Boyd and Facing the Music, we're in her office with her 8 hours a day for a year. And Larry Hand and Rats in the Ranks, the same for about 9 months.
Do they actually forget you're there? Or is that just something people would like to think?
It's not that the fly in the wall business is a nonsense. I mean, it's not that they forget that you're there, but what happens is your relationship with them over the period of shooting evolves. And it begins, as you'd imagine, with a stranger coming into your life and you're very and with a camera, and you're very careful and you're very wary. The longer you stay with people, the more complex they become, and the less judgmental you become about them.
And it takes them,
and while there'll be situations which show them in a vulnerable state, I'll put it that way, you want to basically portray them in the way that you found them.
Carried. Yes! She's tapped into that resource of 200 people, got herself elected, and has now said,
you actually have to like people in this sort of film work. I don't think I could make a film like this, a long-term observational film about people I actively disliked or despised. I don't think I could do it.
Wouldn't it be a bit more challenging then to actually focus on someone who you don't like to see if you can explain their actions?
But if I didn't like them, it would probably be for those sort of ideological, political reasons. I mean, I could never make a film about Pauline Hanson. I would have absolutely no desire to make a film about a person like that because I despise everything about her. It's not just a question of trying to avoid the bias and so on. It's a question of being terrified that it should creep in because you know from experience that if it does, your work is compromised and you simply do not get the sort of material that this medium it gives you the opportunity to capture.
Bob Connolly, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all for the Art Show this week. For more arts, catch Coast to Coast on Sunday morning at 9:30. Tonight we'll leave you with the Australian Dance Theatre's Bird Brain.